Hello and welcome to Fowl Plays, where we look at tales of tabletop tragedy that are sure to ruffle some feathers. I'm your host BossGoose, and today's story features part 2 of the Lazy DM story. This time we return to town for some downtime for OP and the party, only for the DM to somehow simultaneously continue to waste everyone's time while cutting corners, refusing to play out parts of the module or character backstories and opting instead to reveal secrets and disregard player agency in favor of his own. Before we get started though, after a close race to decide which captain will helm the ship for our upcoming voyage, with over 100 geese casting their votes and a lot of support in the comments, we have decided to give the rookie her big break. Of course, we still need to make our offer, which will require a persuasion check, but since she's eager for the opportunity, you can make that roll with advantage, and the DC is not going to be a high one. So go ahead and make your rolls, and we'll check those results in 3, 2, 1. And if you roll 12 or higher, then congratulations. The terms have been agreed upon, the dotted line signed, and the payment delivered in full. We now have the honor of sailing with Captain Charlotte. We'll be casting off soon, but in the meantime we need a name for our ship, and I'd like to hear your suggestions in the comments below. Alternatively, if you rolled 11 or below, she is still interested but needs a little extra incentive to sign on. Lucky for us, I have just the thing. All you need to do is hit that subscribe button, and it'll provide you both with updates whenever new content is available on my channel, and tons of existing videos that'll keep you entertained for hours while sailing the high seas. But now, without any further delays, it's time to take your seats and wet your beaks as we dive on into today's tale. Today's story is titled, Lazy Furry DM Spoils Icewind Dale, Part 2. Well, out of character, I'll let you know. This is a continuation from Part 1 in my last video. To give the gist of my first session of my fatalistic attempt at playing Icewind Dale, 1. I learn the whole party consists of furries, who proceed to mock me for choosing to play a human. 2. I'm told my character wasn't smart enough to have packed for the temperatures of Icewind Dale, and am forced to pay all of my money to replace my gear for heavy winter gear that mechanically functions the same as my starter gear. 3. The DM introduces a cast of NPCs to assist us in a quest, gets bored of having them around halfway through their introduction, and unceremoniously kills them off with an avalanche that almost kills the party. Let me tell you what happened during my second and last session with this particular group. So, I spend the rest of the following week reflecting on my experience with this group. I've been a regular of this subreddit for a while, but I was truly mystified a group this dysfunctional could possibly exist in reality. The DM is not only egotistical with his Fursona DMPC bossing everyone around, but is so lazy he can hardly be bothered to run encounters and play NPCs that aren't his avatar. I try to rationalize it away as the typical awkwardness and slowness of the first few levels, while the party is squishy and trying to get to know each other. I tell myself that next session will be better, because the party will be spending it in town. That should give me a chance to roleplay my character and get to know everyone a little better. In short, that doesn't happen, and I end up getting so frustrated that I get up and leave 2 hours into the session. I'd already learned how much of a lazy, disorganized jerk our DM was, but I didn't truly recognize the depths of his disinterest in running his own game. This session can be best described as a slow-moving train wreck of venom, disorganization, and boredom that ultimately became too much to bear. So, let's start with the beginning of the session. So we're currently traveling back to town on the back of our Tabaxi Ranger's pet bison. DM decides it's time for a random encounter. Suddenly, the ground starts rumbling beneath our feet. A massive monster comes over the horizon and stomps past our tiny group. It's the Tarrasque. Everyone freaks out for a little bit, but the DM tells us we're beneath its notice, and it passes us by. He tells us both in and out of character that he's going to lead us back to kill that thing when we're level 20. My level 3 warlock jokes that if someone told him they were going to fight something that big, he'd tell them good luck and sit in the tavern, which gets a few chuckles from the rest of the group. DM audibly scoffs at me and calls me a coward. Now, maybe it was him trying to be in character, since his DMPC avatar, Marty Stu Were Polar Bear is supposed to be this wise and valorous leader, but the raw contempt in his voice and what he ends up doing later makes me strongly suspect he was serious. I'm caught off guard and more than a little irritated and consider it strike one. We get to the next town and get stopped by the gate guards. Apparently, there's a serial killer going around that's a werebear, like our party lead, and they're hesitant to let him through the gate. More guards come out and surround him, and his DMPC goes into some melodramatic speech about how he will not resist these noble guards who are only doing their duty, but please don't arrest his beloved friends. I should point out that the DM has a very flat, droning voice. When he tried to speak in his DMPC's voice, I think he was trying to sound all lofty and wise with his weird, airy lift to his tone. All it managed to do was make him sound like he was a fat man out of breath, panting every word. Not interested in hearing his speech, the party scatters. Some of us just bolt away, while one genius gets the idea in his head to somehow climb over the wall and jump down into the village using his furry powers. He fails and takes massive fall damage falling over the wall. DM sighs and utters a line that will be burned into my mind forever. Well, out of character, I'll let you know. He goes on to explain that this isn't how he wanted this encounter to go. He just wanted to add some flavor, while totally hogging the spotlight, and hype up an encounter with this polar bear that he plans on hitting us with later. In contrast with their suspicion just a few seconds ago, the guards suddenly lower their spears, and I quote straight from the fat man's mouth, we're just guard dudes. If you say you won't cause trouble, it's not our business what you're doing here. So they open the gate, and DM declares that we all head to the tavern. No explanations, no roleplay, no player agency. The guards just let us through, and we magically appear in the tavern with the DMPC. How immersive. Does the guy that tried to skip the cutscene and jump the gate get his missing health back? No, of course not. He shouldn't have tried that. Moving on. So, we get the bounty for killing the Yetis, and it's at this point that he pulls strike two. The Tabaxi Ranger gets her share of the reward and starts celebrating. I've mentioned the Tabaxi before because she's really the only other member of the group that stood out as memorable. We barely interacted, but she was probably the only person in the group I'd care to play with again. In contrast to the edgelords and generic guys we were playing with, she liked to crack jokes and brighten up the mood by not really taking things seriously. What little I could glean of her backstory was that she was some sort of nomad that lived out in the tundra alone, and so got really excited and cheerful when she got to interact with people. When she gets her share of the pay, she describes how her character does a little happy dance and crawls up on our werebear leader's shoulder to give him a hug. Well, out of character, I'll let you know. DM pauses things to tell her not to try that with him again, that he works a long job before taking time to come and DM this game, and how he's got all sorts of issues with physical contact and why it's unnecessary. I've been through too much to deal with stuff like that. Trying that with me IRL would result in a lot of trouble for you. The only time an edgelord sounds cringier than he already is when he's a furry and tries to growl like a bear after saying it, and only managing to sound like a drunk Chewbacca choking to death. Nonetheless, the Tabaxi apologizes and gets really quiet the rest of the time I'm there. We move on, the mood thoroughly killed. DM declares it's time for the party to handle any business we have in town. I'm surprised the DM doesn't do downtime activities like Xanathars explains. Rather than have us just say what we're doing and do it off screen or roll a few dice, he has everyone do effectively a one-on-one RP with him for whatever shopping trip or activity we want to do, which results in everyone else standing around and being bored. And every time someone does something that would actually require some roleplay, he sighs and chimes in, well, out of character, I'll let you know. Every single time. Don't get attached to this NPC. The book says I'm supposed to be helpful while playing him, but he's a spy for a cult. No point in asking that kid questions about the murders. The book says he doesn't know anything. That's right. This bad DM is somehow simultaneously dedicated to being as lazy as possible in his storytelling and committed to maximum realism at the same time. On the druid's turn, before they can declare what they're going to do, the DM declares that the druid's pocket was picked. The druid declares he's going to track down the thief. Cue 15 minutes of asking around where the thief's hideout is. Going to the thief hideout, and finding 5 thieves standing around counting out the stolen coin purse. Druid loudly demands to have his money back. DM starts snickering. DM asks why the druid went to get the coin purse when it was the paladin who was pickpocketed. Everyone was confused. No, that's not what you said. You clearly said it was the druid. Everyone backs the druid up on this, saying that the DM must have misspoken. Can we just change it so it was the druid that was robbed, or just have the paladin be there instead? He ignores everyone and starts laughing like he's pulled the funniest prank in the world on the druid, loudly wondering why he chose to waste his turn on a side quest that wasn't even his. You're literally the one who told him to do it. You chose not to correct him at any point you were making him RP this investigation. You're the one at fault for this, you fat gaslighting. But it's okay, because he forgives the druid for his mistake and has the thieves give back the coin purse without a fight, going to the next player's turn. Eventually, we get to my turn. If you read my previous post, I mentioned that I'm playing a warlock in Icewind Dale to do a service for my patron. I'm waiting for my patron to reach out to me to give me instructions on what quest I'm supposed to do for him. This is the backstory the DM agreed to give me, on the understanding he'd be expected to give me a hook at some point to go along with what the party is doing.
Okay, Warlock, what do you want to do?
What?
What's your character's motivation? He came to Icewind Dale for something, right?
Awkward silence. Did he seriously forget my character's backstory? Or does he seriously expect me to RP me interacting with my own patron? I ask him what he means, and he and other members of the party get more and more annoyed I don't embark on a massive mini questline doing mundane chores in my room at the inn or opening a business. Apparently, and I kid you not, the Tabaxi took up a ton of time in the session before the one I joined, opening and operating a fishery business, and is expected to check back in when we head back to that town to see how it's running.
Look, are you going to do something or what?
I finally come up with something after a minute. I'd like to go to the bounty office. I figured I'd check and see if my family had a bounty on my head due to some backstory stuff. Or at least kill some minor enemy to get some money to spend since I lost all mine in the first 15 minutes of last session. The fighter chimes in.
I'd like to go with him.
Sure. Might as well get this downtime session done quickly so we can actually go on an adventure together and interact.
Okay, fighter. Your backstory secret is that a group of bandits killed your family, right? Out of character, I'll let you know I'm probably going to have the next group of bandits we fight be those bandits, so I can get it out of the way.
The fighter goes quiet. They hadn't gone into any detail at all about their character. That's right, the DM is just so lazy he was just openly spoiling player backstories to get them out of the way. Anything to avoid having to work on DMing the story, right? And that was strike 3. Something goes down at the bounty office, but I'm not paying attention anymore. Just seething at the DM's blatant disrespect to role-playing and having wasted my time with this game. Someone else's turn comes up, and he wants to buy a particular item from a shop in town.
Sure, look, I don't really understand the part of the book about this shop. Could you guys just sort this out for me?
And just starts uploading shaky phone camera shots of pages from the Icewind Dale book. At that point, I just left the Discord, deleted the invite, and a moment later, the DM blocked me. It was honestly just a disaster, from start to end. It honestly felt like the DM wanted to God mode run Icewind Dale with his self-insert, but couldn't find someone to DM for him. So he effectively wanted us to play as NPCs for him to interact with, and occasionally psychologically torture outside of dungeons. Pachka the Were-Polar Bear, if you ever read this, please get stepped on by the Tarask. Things certainly went from bad to worse here in Part 2. I do want to quickly start by saying that the fact that the DM and the party were supposedly furries is completely irrelevant to this story. In Part 1, I wasn't really sure how things would develop, but now that we're here at the end, it wasn't a necessary detail. and needlessly using that moniker adds to the bad reputation that the group has. But, that aside, this session sucked. Putting aside the DMPC monologue, which was a small thing here, but probably an indicator of things to come should OP have stuck around in this campaign, the DM's attitude was abysmal. He seemed to have taken some kind of personal offense from OP. I don't know if that was because of the fart joke in part 1, or if something else happened between them that isn't revealed in this story, but getting bent out of shape about him lightening the mood after seeing the Tarrasque is very juvenile. Speaking of which, having a force of destruction like that just kinda wandering around outside of town is a little crazy. Now, I get maybe wanting to tease the end of campaign encounter, but this was not a creative way to do it. It's literally an eating machine. There's no way it would ignore a small party of weak adventurers, let alone an entire town. It would chow down and then move on until it went back to sleep. This isn't the worst thing that happened, it's just not a very well thought out event in my opinion. More on the DM's attitude though is the reaction to Tabaxi's hug. On one hand, it is understandable if he had issues with personal space and not liking being touched, I can understand that. But he didn't have to be an ass about it and could have just asked that they not do that again, instead of some cringy line about there being trouble for her if she tried to do that IRL. That's not how real people talk to each other. What really killed me though was how DM somehow masterfully both wasted everyone's time with mundane tasks while simultaneously revealing tons of information that essentially spoiled any sense of immersion or enjoyment for the party. The druid thing alone was completely pointless. Also that he could laugh at some sort of masterful prank even though he clearly gave them the wrong information, I get why OP was getting heated here. But clearly, DM had no interest in running this game. Telling the party about privileged information regarding NPCs and even dropping major spoilers for PCs without any thought. And really, that's gotta be the worst thing. Telling everyone Fighter's story and that the bandits would just be some random encounter so that he could get them out of the way had to be extremely disheartening, not to mention completely forgetting or just not caring enough about OP's story to make any effort. Really, if he didn't want to run a game, he should have just found a group to play in. But I suspect that OP was right about him just wanting the privileges of a DM without any of the work involved. In my opinion, 2 sessions is too many for a guy like this, so I'm glad OP got out when he did, and I hope the rest didn't stick around for much longer after. Anyways, thanks for checking out my video and sticking around till the end. I upload new content every Tuesday and Friday, so make sure you check out my channel for more D&D stories. And if you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave me a goosebump in the comments below. Your feedback and support is greatly appreciated. But until next time, be good players.